Hey everybody, welcome to this week's episode of KLA Now, coming to you live from the Rockville, Maryland office of Kessler Lending Advisors and Homebridge Financial Services. We have a great show for you today. Today we're going to be talking about tips and tricks. We got a great special guest with us today, our friend Marc Cowan. He's coming to you from Remax Realty Services. Marc is one of the up-and-coming real estate agents in the Washington metro area. We're going to be discussing today lots of things that he has picked up in his career, tips that he can give you. Doesn't matter whether you're a new buyer, first-time home buyer, or whether you have a lot of experience in the real estate market. He's going to be talking about things that you need to know about. So this is going to be a great show. So everybody, Marc, thank you for joining us today. Greatly appreciate it.
Thanks very much for inviting me, Cody.
It's my
pleasure to be here. Thank you very much.
So, let's just kind of jump in and we're going to go through this and the tips and tricks. If you've seen one of our KLA Now episodes, they really are designed to give the viewers information that real estate agents, mortgage people in the industry really aren't talking about. So the tips and tricks segment is designed to give people insider information that, again, not a lot of people are mentioning. So, we'll start with this. You can hear that you have an accent. So tell me,
Yes.
Tell me where you're from originally.
Okay, well, as you guessed,
Give me a little backstory.
something gave it away, the accent perhaps, that I'm not quite locally bred and born and upraised through local proximities to this location. I was obviously UK based, and I served the military in the UK for 23 years. And from there I had the honour and privilege of working with the Department of Defence for 5 years overseas. And then I was blessed by meeting an American lady, and here I am to this day, and on the way back realizing it was time to transition to a normal life, as normal as possible. I met with some friends of mine that had done a similar line of work, and a lot of the skills from an intelligence community seemed to transfer very well into real estate, from building relationships, rapport, and networking, and researching, and so on. And so it made a lot of sense to me. So I spent some time with those people, and the more I learned about the industry, always had an interest and a passion for houses. And obviously, as we all do, I've lived in a few. So I very much sort of pursued the whole idea. So as far as transitioning to this country was concerned, I also found my life being carved out on the path of real estate. I'm very pleased, and I'm so happy that I took that route.
That's awesome. Well, like I said, it's when you come across a great real estate agent, there are some factors that definitely go into that. You mentioned some of them. So how do you feel? It was interesting that you said that. Talk to me a little bit more about the intelligence experience in the military, and how that's conveyed to a benefit that your clients get from you.
Absolutely. I think, and I know you have previous military as well, so you'll totally embrace the sort of things I'm talking about.
Not everybody gets it, but
exactly. But that attention to detail, certainly, and because of the discipline over the years that you and I both know about, there is that dedication to the client that I think is born from those backgrounds, sort of the way we sort of did our business.
You don't know how to fail. It's one of those things where it's not just a job, you take it personally.
Absolutely. And having dealt with some bad people during my military career, I now have the privilege of dealing with wonderful people. So it's a change to my customer base.
I understand. to say the least.
Exactly. And I love being part of a scenario where we're not just buying a home or finding a home or even selling a home. We're creating a lifestyle for people I hope to become friends. I'm all about building lifetime relationships. And it's about stepping above and beyond. It's not just being the realtor. It's about being that point of contact for that person on a Sunday evening at 10 o'clock, and I know you do a lot of this, where they can reach for the phone, and I'm going to answer, and I'm going to do my very best to help them. And it may be a question that's not within my job description, but I'll certainly be there to help them. And I think a lot of those attitudes come from what you and I understand from that military background. And certainly when I moved and transitioned into an intelligence-focused role, the research, the analytical side of it, when we do comps to discover the best pricing for our clients, whether we're buying, selling, we really enjoy that, and we have that strange little room we go to and start comping everywhere. So I think a lot of that transitioned well, and just being on time. I mean, that's the basics, being on time and really going that extra mile for the clients.
So one of the great things, white glove service. You know, there are not a lot of realtors that offer that, or at least if they do offer it, they might not deliver on it. But you know, guys, if you're out there watching, that is one of the greatest things that this gentleman offers is you really do get that white glove service. And I would say that it also doesn't matter with the price point. A lot of people think that they have to be buying, you know, an expensive house in order to get that level of service, and that's just not the case. So you know, hats off to you. Not everybody has figured that out. So let's get a little bit more into the details. So we live in a pretty interesting marketplace.
Absolutely.
Washington, D.C., I'd say it's probably one of the hottest continual real estate market industries or demographics. And it's for so many different reasons. Obviously, we got the federal government here, and there's a large transition that takes place every 4 years. But it's got some great neighborhoods, you know, and there's a lot of demand as well. So some of the things that we want to talk about is you know, I know that you work really well with first-time home buyers, and it's because of the information, the attention to detail. So why don't we talk, and we'll start with them. Tell me some of the tips that you've kind of come across as you've, you know, forged your career. Some of the most important things, if you had to name maybe 2 or 3 of them, what would you tell a first-time home buyer as, hey, something you got to know?
Okay, I think it's really important, and I'm so happy you asked me that, because it's rarely covered in a great deal of detail. When you read online, on Google and so on, it's kind of brushed over. Yeah. I think for a first-time home buyer, it's the first time they've really embarked on this adventure. Yeah. And of course, as we all know, whenever we're buying a particular car or whatever we're buying on the marketplace, somebody else always has a great opinion and a recommendation. And for a new home buyer, everybody becomes a part-time realtor in their friends and family. And I'm sure they mean it in the nicest way. But quite often it can really
I've never experienced
No, of course not. We all have, haven't we? So what I would suggest is get yourself organized as soon as you make that plan that you're going to join that home search adventure. And the more planning and research you do and getting yourself associated with fantastic lenders, people that are giving you the best advice on the products on the market, getting a very strong pre-approval, which makes my job so much easier, especially when we come to making offers and so on. That is a crucial part of this business. And I know you do an amazing job.
Talk more detail about the planning. You know, that's really specific.
Yeah, the planning is important. Don't make huge, big-ticket item purchases in your 3 to 6 months. Now, this is more stepping into your territory, so I don't want to do that. But from a realtor's perspective,
you know, it's you know, you ever have a conversation with your wife, and you know, you'll tell her, you know, no, you look great, it's perfect, it's beautiful, and it doesn't matter how many times you tell her, but she'll ask one other person.
Absolutely.
And now it's so it's the same thing.
Spot on.
We tell the clients all the time these things, but when you hear it from a realtor, it drives it home.
No, you're right. So avoid those big ticket items. Don't mass a load of money on your credit cards, because obviously when you come to the likes of Cody and his team, it's vitally important your credit rating is really up there, because it makes the process a lot easier. But certainly with the talents that Cody and his team, that doesn't mean it's not going to happen. I would also suggest identify your wish list. So when you meet with that realtor, and I hope I get a chance to talk more about how you should select your realtor later on as we talk, Cody. But when you meet your realtor, turn up with your wish list and your need to haves and your like to haves. And think about your commuting, what's important to you. Do you need to be in a city environment, or can you stretch out a little bit into the suburbs? Is it important to you for outdoors, or do you need the metro? All these type of things are crucially important, that your realtor then should sit down with you and listen. Your realtor needs to be a good listener. As well as asking questions that help you, it's also important that he's a great listener and he's listening to exactly what it is you're looking for. And then building that whole file as such, which is what I do. I take my clients for lunch, we go somewhere nice and relaxed, or I go and visit them wherever it's convenient. We sit down and have a conversation, so it's not an interview process. And what I'm trying to do there is really go down into the weeds of detail, what they're looking for, because it's my job to make it as pleasurable and as stress-free as possible, because so many people hear that after divorce, and some people like to combine the two, house hunting or house selling is the next stressful. My job is to make it the least stressful and actually enjoy the process, and they can see that how we're building the stages towards success.
100%.
And that's what I believe is that early days of preparation from the buyer's perspective, knowing where you need to be, what your need to haves are, what your nice to haves are, getting your credit rating as good as it can be, protecting that for the 3 to 6 months before we get to this stage of talking to you, coming to me. I think that's really important.
Do you feel that, or do you find that a lot of people aren't prepared and that they haven't planned?
Yeah, I think what happens is some people just go out, they go and visit open houses, and they discover a property they fall in love with.
Yeah.
And then, of course, perhaps they've been searching for properties they fall in love with, but their bank account doesn't necessarily fall in love with. And of course, that then brings on the disappointment, and then we're already disillusioned with our own home search.
It's the old adage, you don't fit the numbers into the house, you fit the house into the numbers.
Yeah.
Meaning that you've got to find out exactly what you're comfortable paying, what you qualify for, and then you go and find the house that fits into that, okay? So that is a tip that I'll throw on there, and I know that a good realtor like Mark was just talking about, they're going to give that guidance. You know, and to kind of, you can agree with me on here or not, you know, with today's day and age, there are so many different websites that house information on homes. You know, you can look at a home 24 hours a day, 365 days a year, and it's actually being thrown at people now. And there's a reason for that. But the point being is that it's so easy to fall in love with these houses. It's an emotional transaction. So when you find a realtor, and one of the things that I'll compliment you is that the realtor should be making sure that while yes, they're appeasing you from showing you homes and walking through the process, they should also be giving you a good amount of guidance that's going to protect you from that emotional hardship. Meaning that it's real easy for a realtor to say, oh great, you guys want to go look at houses? Great, you want to write a contract? We can absolutely do that. And then go worry about the financing. It's not that you can't do it that way. It's that a good real estate agent's going to know that it's not the optimal way to go about it. You get your financing in line, so essentially that when you're walking to make an offer, you're almost cash in hand. That's the best way to go about it. You know, and from a negotiation tactic, we can talk a little bit about that. How beneficial is that? If you're a first-time home buyer, or even somebody that's experienced, can you talk a little bit about the difference in your ability to negotiate on their behalf with somebody that's got a weak pre-approval versus somebody that has a pre-commitment, you know, cash in hand?
Yeah, that pre-commitment, Cody, as you know better than anybody, is a golden nugget when it comes to the negotiating table, or we're up against other bids, certainly. Quite often, as we all appreciate, that fabulous property that sticks out in the mind of many home buyers, whether it be from an open house or it's come online on Zillow and so on, Redfin, all those sites, people rush to it, it'll go in a few days, and then we have to prepare our bid. So it's the most attractive. Now, that doesn't necessarily have to be the highest, right? And this is why I love working with Cody and his team, because it's properly packaged, it comes with a cover letter, it comes with the support from Cody and his team. I love the way you'll contact the lender and explain to them how qualified the buyers are. That makes a huge amount of difference. What I'd like to do with my offer as well is write a cover letter. I get my buyers to write a personal letter, so they may never meet the owner until they get to the settlement table. But that cover letter makes so much difference because you've built a relationship with that owner. Now that owner, if they've spent so much time and money, they've brought up their children in that home, they've seen them go off to their first day of school, people have retired, that whatever, there's a huge catalogue of memories. So we're dealing with things that people are generally, other than their children and their spouses, the most passionate thing they have in life.
Absolutely.
So what's important is we build a relationship with the buyer. So they write a personal letter. I love what you did to your kitchen. It's amazing. You've left no detail untouched. I love what you did with the garden, the way you've done. Those sorts of things really make a difference to the owner. And when they see the bids in front of them, they then are building a relationship with that person that sent that person letter, and they may be 5-10K less than the best offer, but they've got this amazing underwritten pre-approval ready to go, this commitment letter, which is worth so much. It totally obliterates that extra 5 or 10 when it's coming from a regurgitated banking pre-approval, not really anything but in theory letter. And it's so strong that when we go into a bid and we're up against other bids, to have all of these assets on our table in our pack. So we don't just throw in the contract, we don't just hand it over in an email. It comes with all the support from yourselves. It comes from my cover letter explaining the highlights of the offer, why this is a great offer, why your seller would be pretty crazy not to accept this offer. And also the personal letter that gives it that personal touch that builds a relationship with the seller. and builds that bond between the buyer and seller. And they really want your contract to work because they kind of like you.
Exactly.
Yeah?
Yep. You tie them emotionally to a transaction.
Absolutely.
Where they're not trying to get
Yeah.
emotional about it. You know, when you're on the selling side of
Absolutely.
things, you're just looking at an offer and it's black and white.
Yeah.
It's numbers. Who am I going to make more for? And then all of a sudden somebody comes in and there's now emotion involved.
Absolutely.
Yeah, no, that's a great tactic.
And I'll just say that when our offer goes in, our offer isn't some Mickey Mouse ballpark, let's rip these people off. That doesn't work.
Yeah.
That just insults people, it's disrespectful.
That's a fact.
And unless it's a distressed property and there's good reason for it, and again, I always justify in a very detailed cover letter as to why we've arrived at this offer. The comps, these are the comps, this is why we feel this is a sensible price to be offering. Now, of course, there's always room for negotiation.
Certainly.
And that's important to understand from both the buyer's and the seller's perspective. But also, it's about ingratiating the buyer to the owner, saying, look, we really respect your property. We're not going to try and rip you off. This is what we feel it's sensibly worth, and we would like to buy this home. And these are the reasons why. So we justify our offer. And it's not just a ballpark 450,000. It may say 452,000 because when I've explained the details and the research to the buyer, and I've said, look, this is what I would recommend as a guide price. They pick that price, not me. They pick the offer price, as we all know. But it's an informed offer price. It's educated, and they feel comfortable where they're coming in.
Again, you heard it from the man. You know, so get something strong. You know your details. You know, as you're walking in, but being able to negotiate on your behalf. It's one of the biggest talents a real estate agent on the buying side has for you. How are they going to protect you in the contract, and then how are they going to negotiate the best deal? And I want to take my hat off to you and let you know that somebody that basically said what you said. There's a lot of real estate agents that will go out there and take note to this. There are a lot of agents that will tell you that they will negotiate rock bottom, will offer rock bottom prices, but they don't understand or they're not conveying to the client. Actually, that's extremely disrespectful. I don't see it happen very often where somebody's come in, $50,000, $60,000, $75,000 less than asking. That almost ends the negotiation process right there because you've offended the seller, you've offended the listing agent, and they've basically taken you as somebody who's not a legitimate buyer anymore, and then you're just somebody that's lowballing. So having somebody that recognizes this, but doesn't say, hey, listen, we're not going to fight for you. We're going to reasonably fight for you. We're going to know where that threshold is that's, hey, this is the lowest that we can go without insulting somebody. Not a lot of real estate agents know that. Certainly not a lot of real estate agents are talking about that. So that's a fantastic tip to make sure that when you're coming into the market, which DC is such a competitive market, even in we have low inventory, which is true, but when you're talking about multiple offers on properties, you gotta have an edge. You have to have something that sets you apart from everybody else. And if you don't have something solid, like a pre-commitment letter or a personalized letter, guys, what's your only negotiation strategy is to offer more than the next guy. And that's not a good place to be. So fantastic tip. I really do like that. Let's talk a little bit on the other end. I know that you do some great work from a listing standpoint. Able to move properties higher than what the market value is in a very short period of time. So let's talk a little bit about those tips and strategies there. I don't want to give away secrets to any other competing agents out there. But if you had to say something that was high level, what is it that makes you different than a lot of these other?
I would say attention to detail and preparation, presentation. So those three things are key. When I have the privilege of being invited to talk to a seller about listing their property, we go through a presentation, and it's not a formal presentation. It's just they can see a very professional presentation that we go through the guidelines about how we would prepare their home, how I've arrived at the price I'm suggesting for a price guide. We look at the comps, we look at the market trends in the area, we look at what their personal circumstances are and what they're trying to achieve. And then we also talk about how we're going to market the house to the best potential. Now, obviously, that may differ depending on what type of house, its location. But I am a very big, strong ambassador supporting the idea of staging. So if we have an empty home, I spend a lot of time of bringing some really great stages in, and it's surprisingly inexpensive. And what I try and educate people, and I don't wish to sound condescending, I don't mean it that way, but what I try and pass over.
You are
my
British
message.
now. I'm kidding.
Okay, I have a license.
I
I get. All right.
I'm completely kidding.
I'm sure. Now I'm concerned about the questions that may be coming in. Anyway, the point of staging is a lot of people instantly just think about the cost.
Yeah.
And we're talking $2,000 to $3,000 on a normal condo size staging. If the property's empty, what I emphasize is by making that initial investment, Cody, you sell your house a lot quicker.
Yeah.
Guess what? You probably sell it for a lot more. So that initial $2,000 to $3,000.
Well, why? Touch on that. I know the answer, but I want to make sure that they understand
absolutely.
why.
It's a great question. People coming into an empty home are immediately turned off by it because they have to create that vision. And many people, I'm
Don't have
sure,
that.
come in and they can do that, but some people don't. And first-time buyers especially are looking for, let's say, a template. I love the way this is. It suits my lifestyle. I love the contemporary feel,
Yeah.
or I love the historical feel. But then really bringing out the full potential of the interior of that property and investing a little bit of money in that, you get your money back 2-3-fold easily, and it sells quicker.
So think about this, to that point. If you've got a house on the market and you don't sell that house within the first 30 days, what happens?
It starts to go stale, and
So
people
the first
start
thing
using
is
it in
you
negotiation.
start dropping the price.
Yeah.
So think about it, and I don't know what the average is, because you have so many different areas.
Yes.
But if you had to maybe take an educated guess on what the average percentage of first shot reductions would be.
I would say, well, it goes two ways, and it's a great question because it enables me to bring out another point I would always say for sellers specifically. If you've marketed your house a certain price, and let's say you've received good advice, but you wanted to be more optimistic, and perhaps you've gone near the higher end for your price range, because you're not in a rush,
Yeah.
and you strongly feel that perhaps the agent should have said you should be closer to the top of the range. The problem is it then sits on the market for quite some time, and it becomes stale. And then you start to see, as we've all seen on MLS or Redfin, wherever, where they do a price reduction. But they do a price reduction of 5,000, then another 5, then another 5. And it doesn't have any impact because people just see that as a trickle effect that makes them look desperate.
And they're
If you're going to do a
waiting.
price effect,
They're waiting.
what I tend to do with my clients, if somebody is absolutely adamant, because they have the final say, if they're saying, no, Mark, I want to market my house at this price, and I'm saying, okay, I think you're being a little bit optimistic, but I write it into our agreement that we'll advertise it at that price for a month, and I will do everything to sell it, open houses, extensive marketing, the whole lot. But if we have no offers in that first month, and the feedback's coming back that we're too highly priced, then the owner is at least prepared to make that drop. But when you make the drop, make a significant drop, 10, 15, doing the little 3s and 5s and stuff, it just dwindles things away, and people get a false impression about the house itself. And of course they'll use it in negotiation. If they see it's been reduced 3 or 4 times instead of just once, they can see that they've got a way to get in there and start negotiating a lower price.
So think about his point. So you are worried about a $2,000 or $3,000 or even $5,000 investment by making sure that you stage the house correctly and well, and you're making sure that by doing so the house sells quicker, so that on the back end you don't have to continually reduce the price of the home in order to make it sell. So you have to look at it, and the point is that, guys, you know, it's if you have the number right now and you can get rid of that house in the first 30 days, it's not really a loss. By holding on to that property, you're actually going to end up losing a whole lot more money on the back end. So, you know, again, great advice. Do you ever, when you have one of those tricky properties that you've got a client that obviously, you know, if they've lived in the house for a long period of time, they love that house.
Yes.
You know, and they start valuing things that really don't have a value, such as, you know, it's a completely brick house.
Yes.
You know, that doesn't change the value at all, but, you know, emotionally to some people that's a big deal. But what about, you know, that client that you say, you know, I've done all my due diligence, $450, that's probably right where we need to be,
Yes.
and they just are stuck at $475.
Right.
Do you ever go and get an upfront appraisal?
It's well worth doing, and that's a great point you're making, Cody. Again, it helps maintain that close bond you hope to have built with your seller.
Yeah.
So you're not in any way offending them, because people become, quite rightly so, very sensitive
Sure.
about their house. they've invested money, years, effort, and all sorts of things have gone on, and the memories that are contained. So they don't like it if you're saying, no, that's not worth what you think it's worth.
Yeah.
So by bringing an appraiser in, you have a third party there. So it's the third party that takes responsibility for saying, actually, your house will not really achieve more in an appraisal for 450, because then if we sell, and you know this very well, if we sell at 470, but then the buyer's lender comes in and appraises at 450, then the deal can fall out the window.
Absolutely.
So there's no point. So unless there's a meeting in the middle, or the buyer is happy to spend 20,000 of his own cash, knowing that the property is then less than what he's paid, which most buyers don't.
Yeah.
Then I agree with Cody. If there's that issue, bring in an appraiser in. And as a realtor, I do my very best to build relationships with appraisers, because they're a huge font of knowledge. And they're great to pick up a phone and ask advice.
Yeah.
And certainly if it gets to that point that you've risen, by bringing an appraiser out, it takes away the pressure between the realtor and the
100%.
client, and it's the appraiser that's calling you.
Don't forget, most people now, you know, the number one website to go to find out what your property's worth is Zillow. A lot of people don't understand that in some areas Zillow is inaccurate by almost 20%. So that's a huge chunk, meaning that if, you know, I think my house is worth 500,000 and it's really worth, or will appraise for 400,000, that's a pretty big chunk of change to be off by. So, well, you know, I would say that this has been some great information for the, you know, buyers, and we covered the sellers. Give me one last, what's a great tip? If and it doesn't have to be buyer or seller specific. Okay. You can just say, hey, this is one thing that I've picked up on in my career that everybody, if you're in the real estate market, this is what you got to know.
All right. Well, it's a cliche, but I'm going to build upon the cliche. Is location. You've got to get the location right. There's no point in stopping by in an open house on a Sunday afternoon. The house is dreamlike, and you fall for it and you buy it, but it's not commutable. It's not a great schooling area for your children, whatever it may be. It's got to be location. But building upon that, don't always go for the biggest house on the street. You want to be getting the house that's maybe medium, or even the smallest in the best location, because that's the one that's going to escalate in value over the years. It's going to be measured by what's at the top, and the one at the top is not going to creep very high, but the ones coming up around the side are the ones that are going to increase in value.
Fantastic advice. So guys, you know, that's what we have for you today. Don't forget, this is a live show, so please share it. You know, write to us here on Facebook if you have any questions. And if you have questions for Marc specifically, if you want to, you know, have a meeting with Marc so he can expand upon his knowledge, whether you're a buyer or if you have a house to sell, again, highly recommend getting in touch with this gentleman. So how can they do that? If they're out there looking at this today, how can they get in touch with you?
Certainly. Well, I have a website with markofdistinctionhomes.com. All my contact details are on there. It's Marc with a C. And my telephone number, 202-476-9790. Call me anytime, day or night, and I'm going to be answering. Or my email, which again is markofdistinctionhomes@gmail.com. I'd love to hear from you. If you'd just like some useful information, whether you be a first-time home buyer or perhaps somebody downsizing, please give me a call or an email. I'll be there to help you out along the way.
Excellent. Highly recommended. But if anybody has any questions for us, always feel free to reach out to us. You can hit us at Kessler Lending Advisors at homebridge.com. You can always ask questions right here on Facebook, but make sure that you follow us on Facebook, like us here, like us on Instagram and Twitter. So that's all that we have for today's show. We always thank you for watching, and we look forward to catching you next time on KLA Now.
Thank you very much.